series by the Naukri Hiring Suite family, which includes Naukri.com, Resdesk, Employer Branding, I Am Jobs, Hirist. My name is Prashant Sharma, and I am a very, very small member of the InfoEdge marketing function. And we're super happy to have you join us this Wednesday evening, right on time. I'm very, very happy that it's 4 and, we've already got close to 100 and more people already joined in. We sincerely hope that, you're staying safe and taking all the precautions in these pandemic times. Like I've said before, our objective through this series is to ensure that, we can all learn from the experiences and insights of the industry leaders and together try to navigate, these times of extreme uncertainty, especially with regards to recruitment. It's a pleasure to have 3 esteemed panelists, from the recruitment world today. And I will, of course, bring them into the discussion and, and then move on with the topic and everything. But here are a few things to keep in mind about the webinar before we start. We're starting at 4 p.m. and we hope to sort of wind up by 4:55. We were lucky to receive so many registrations and questions that we have a basic flow and structure already in place. That being said, do not worry. We'll be doing a few live polls as well, and we'll try to take questions as well based on the availability of time. So please feel free to send us your questions in the chat windows and in the Q&A section. I think largely you guys have attended so many webinars that you know what's about to happen, you know how it goes. So you are also pros as our panelists. So please be ready, right? Now, I think one thing that I did want to say is that the topic that we're discussing today is a topic that is extremely important and of great relevance. In the pre-COVID world, we were in a situation where the diversity conversation had gathered great momentum. I think globally, within India, we were constantly talking about those things. Organizations were taking some great steps. We were hearing wonderful things. But much like everything, I think the momentum for this piece has also taken a little bit of it, or has it? I think that is something that we're here to sort of discuss and talk about. And to do this today, we are joined by 3 panelists. Firstly, I think we have Raksha Agarwal. She's the director and head talent acquisition at SAP. She's a seasoned leader with close to 2 decades of experience across APAC and EMA geographies. I think someone who's worked across big tech organizations and is someone who's worked across multiple elements of HR as well. I think we're very, very grateful for to have you here, Raksha. Thank you so much for joining in. Next up, we also have Mr. Aditya Singh, someone who I've known for a very long time, someone who's extremely enthusiastic about some great HR conversations. He is the head talent acquisition for India at Informatica, a wonderful product company. I think with a blend of both consulting and MNC organizations, he's worked across the globe and he's designed and deployed wonderful talent acquisition strategies that work for all stakeholders within the organization. Thank you so much, Addy, for joining us. The third person and another wonderful panelist we have is Anu Matthew. She's the recruiting leader at Cerner India. Anu again has more than 15 years of experience. She currently leads the recruitment functions for India in a way that she heads campus hiring, internship programs, leadership hiring, D&I initiatives, and so much more. She's also a certified global professional within HR and a doctoral student from XLRI Jamshedpur. I think within this panel, we've got more than 50 years of experience. So when I say 50 years of experience, I hope it doesn't make anyone feel old. but I think with that, I'm going to quickly sort of, bring the panelists in. And to start things off, as is our usual template, no very elongated answers, no nothing. What we will definitely do is I'm going to go to each of you, starting with Anu, and it will be one pleasant surprise professionally and one pleasant surprise personally that has come your way through the COVID crisis. Right, okay. Anu, over to you.
So pleasant surprise is experimenting new ideas both at home and at work. At work is, it's a time to just work on ideas that you really wanted to do but couldn't do, and there's a lot of thinking time. At home, it is experimenting parenting tips with parenting stuff with my children, trying out stuff in the kitchen, and also personally trying some newer techniques on me to be a different individual. So that's how I would look at pleasant surprises.
Wonderful. I think that's again something that I think a lot of us are doing. We're working on ourselves as well. Raksha, you're next. What's happening? One personal and one professional positive.
Sure, Prashant. I think professionally, for me, it has been more connected to people across teams, across globes, and having our priorities clear, saying, okay, what do we focus on? Uh, Personally, I think it has given me a lot of time to build gratitude for whatever we have. And obviously spend a lot of time with my son, which I'm usually not able to do because it's gone less on traveling, uh, no office commute, spending 3 hours in traffic and so on. So I'm grateful for that again.
Fantastic. I think being grateful and prioritizing, great, important insights. I think that everyone is sort of dabbling in. Addy, coming to you next.
Yeah, professionally, got there's more focused approach because I'm saving time on travel. So office normally have people walking into my cabin and all that. So you have a lot of time to self, introspect, look at things far more differently professionally. A lot of solutioning of same thing in a very different way. Personally, picked up some old thing which I used to do. I started doing sketching, pencil sketching, which I used to do a long time back. I didn't know I had it. Did that, spending time with family. I think so. These are things which is happening in a positive way.
Fantastic. I think again, I think the purpose of this rapid fire Q&A is that we've all got great things to be grateful for. I think extremely privileged in terms of what we are able to achieve and what we're able to do as well. So I think thank you for bringing all of that together and sharing those honest experiences as well. I think at this point, because now the attendees know you a little bit, I think we can sort of transition into our first aspect. And I think what we will be sort of opening up around the diversity conversation is a first poll. I think all our audiences, okay, so we've already crossed 180. So all 180 plus of you, there's a poll coming up on your screens very, very shortly. It's a pretty simple poll. Do you feel Indian organizations are on par with their global counterparts when it comes to diversity and inclusion? These are completely anonymous, so please be as honest as you'd like to be. I think in another 5-10 seconds, we'll see the results of this as well. But I think, yeah, so the current state of D&I is something that we do want to continue to discuss, because whether it was pre-COVID or post-COVID, I think certain things are constant. And those are the things that we want to talk about. I think now we can see the results of the poll as well. Very, very quickly coming up on your screens. All right, so 50% feel in some areas, 31% have a resounding no, and only 16% would say that we're at par. Great, I think, thank you for your honesty. I think to all the attendees as well, that's a wonderful mirror to what we want to talk about. On the first question, and this is a question that may not be as positive as our previous aspect that we were discussing. I want to ask very, very simply, why do some D&I programs fail? Why do we see them, working abroad, and why do they not work here? And I'm going to ask all three of you, about the same, starting with Anu first. Anu, why do certain programs not work in India?
Yeah, so I think very interesting perspective, Prashant. First thing, we should look at the context in which some of these programs are defined. So, look at India as a country. Our traditional belief itself, or the foundation itself, is unity in diversity. So, to create harmony in all that we do, while that's been applied in philosophical, religious, or political areas, organizations have not been using that in most of the cases, but it's ingrained in our culture in most of the time. I think there's nobody, I think a 5-year-old child today speaks about 2-3 languages, which is very diverse. And that's not the case in other countries. They just have one language. So some of these programs have been defined based on the context in which they are, the country, culture, etc. And hence, when you try to apply that in the Indian context, it will not work. That's one. The second thing is that I would say that some of them are really ambitious, over-ambitious goals, depending on the size and shape of the organization, the pace of the organization. So just because it's happening in the industry, you don't have to really bring it unless otherwise there's a need. So that is the second thing, it doesn't succeed. And the third element, which I actually feel, is that our comparison, are we comparing with the right counterparts most of the time? So is our comparison right all the time? So if India has to define a DNI phenomenon or a DNI agenda, we're actually kind of copy paste from other geographies. But does India have a unique definition of what is our need in terms of DNI? And if that is the case, then we can get into a sustainable program. And that is one of the reasons which I think that things don't take off. These three elements: is it what we need? Is it what we have? And if that's the case, how do we build something new?
Fantastic. I think some very valid points there. And Raksha, if I come to you next, I think again, your organization across geographies would have implemented, I don't even know how many initiatives. So if you could just draw from your own experience or your surroundings for a bit.
Sure, Prashant, it's a very interesting question, and I like the conversation which Anu just the point of view that Anu just gave all of us. And I completely believe, a lot of times we say it's a globally designed program, but what we do is, it's globally designed, but how to make it locally relevant, that's very important. Second thing which I believe is DNI is not an agenda which is a recruiter's agenda or an HR agenda or a business leader agenda. I think what we need to understand is that DNI is owned by all of us. There are no two people who are similar. So unless we understand that, DNI, everybody is a different individual. So when we talk about diversity, it is not specific to a gender, to a race, to a religion, to a ethnicity, and so on. Everybody, and diversity of thoughts is what brings it innovation. So having said that, unless we build that culture of DNI being owned by all of us and have a holistic approach to a DNI strategy, which is also aligned to the business strategy. So figure out what is the problem or what is the need for the business to focus on diversity or inclusion, and then build your DNI strategy around it. And most often than not, we don't do it. And that is why, it comes to a point where it's not successful. It doesn't take away.
I think another thing that I did want to sort of ask you about was that, within those failed measures, do we then try to reinvent the same strategy and try to balance it out, or do we move on to a different strategy? I mean, how would you handle a situation like that when it's fallen flat?
Yeah, I think we need to figure out why did it fall flat. So when we say a root cause analysis, and again, was it aligned to the business strategy? Again, I'm coming back here because SAP, as all of you know, is a pioneer in this field. We have a lot of diversity initiatives. We have a lot of inclusion initiatives. And I think it's diversity and inclusion go hand in hand. So what we need to look at it, and it's not that everything that we do is successful. We do fall flat on a lot of things. So we need to learn from those and figure out why did we fail? Was there not enough buy-in from the participants? Was there not enough buy-in from the business leaders? We as recruiters did not own it up. Or did we not sensitize the people around us? Did we not build that safety net for our people to be able to intake something like that? And that is very important. So I think it's not about saying, this approach that if we failed in a program, we go back and take up another program, or if we've, or we just rehash that entire program and relaunch it. I think it's supposed to be supposed to be situation specific and also the market unit specific, because some program which is working in China may not work in India, and so on.
Aditya, what would you like to add to add to the same piece around why certain programs fall flat?
Yeah, so first, as what Raksha really pointed out, the problem is people look at diversity and they only think gender, at least in India. That mindset needs to come out, because it could be anything, right? The way I think, the way you think is also very different, right? That's called diverse, right? And to be successful in this time, organizations need to be future focused. They need to be creative. They need to be agile, innovative, and resilient and flexible. The adaptability right now is the key sense from a diversity angle. The problem in India, predominantly in the Asian countries, is one, they look at DNI as very simple thing as someone who has to do mandatory training. There's perks of working from home, right? So doing mandatory trainings. Ask anybody else, oh, do I have to complete this? Yes, you have to do this. So the mindset of mandatory training, the way things get implemented is so different than doing it of saying that, hey, I think you need to do this instead of doing it, right? It should come within yourself of saying, what's happening new? What do I need to do to to take a step forward. It's become like a checkbox, right? Environment. There's lack of, and we spoke well before we went live. The lack of consistency from the time, right? It's seasonal. Everybody will call you for a webinar in March suddenly, right? But then it tapers down after a period of time, and also, lack of push from a leadership standpoint. A lot of places I've seen that. I think somewhere down the line, some of the leaders don't understand the large scale ROI in doing these kind of not initiative, but it's the way of life, as simple as that, right? And small things. Look at job descriptions, right? Best and the worst example. All of you, all three of us are in talent acquisition. We know it better. So there are small things which needs to happen, but people. I still believe the fact that people don't know why are they doing it. Right? That mindset is missing. I think we're doing it because it's so different. The way Anu and I are wired is so different. But when you work together, the solution will be very different, right? Instead of me and somebody else doing it who look at things the same way. If you put the same input, you get the same output, right? But if you put different input, output will differ. So that's mine.
Fantastic. I think, like you said, that thought diversity angle also is very, very crucial. And I think this is something that does sort of set us right. I think, while of course I think diversity is much bigger than gender diversity. I think one question that I do want to ask is, because it's contextualized to India very well, and I'm going to ask both the ladies on the webinar about this. I think we've always heard that there are certain roles that women may not, be the most suitable for, and those roles are coming from within manufacturing or frontline sales, and a lot of those aspects, those are very, very unfortunate stereotypes that have existed for the longest time. I think, how do you hope to sort of have that perception change come about, or how would you think would be a small stepwise way that we can work on this? And I'm going to come to Raksha first. Raksha, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure, Prashant. Interesting question again. And I was having this conversation, exactly the same conversation with my business leader yesterday, about having to figure out, and specifically like sales, as you said, frontline sales. We may not have many women contenders there, or the general perception is difficult there. So we need to figure out, one, who are our role models there. We will have people there, and build personas. What is it that is required? And also build credibility and education amongst the hiring fraternity, or the hiring manager, if I may call it, saying, it's okay to have, so why don't we try this? What's the risk here? We may fail, right? But to fail is okay. And I think that's something that even this pandemic has taught us. To fail on something is okay. So we have those set agendas, or we have those set mindsets wherein we think a particular role may not be suitable, but there are ways that we need to build. And I think building out role models and success stories is a very small step in that direction that we can look at and take.
I mean, once again, I think role models would be a very, very important aspect. I think who would not want that inspiration to sort of look at? I think great insight. Anu, what would you like to add? What would inspire you?
Yeah, so I would look at stereotypes as just packaging it for simplicity, and complexity is hard, to package it as stereotypes is very easy. So you just say that, okay, it's difficult to position a woman in this role or a man in this role. But, otherwise, if you were asking me 10 years back, the notion was male breadwinners, female homemakers, etc. Today, it's not like that. The world is changing, who's the breadwinner? It is up to, it's very different today. And there are no jobs, as Raksha said, role models. Again, go back to 10 years. There were very less role models in some of these jobs. But today the situation has changed, and there are so many people coming in. You always thought that a teacher would only be a female teacher, or a nurse is the female nurse. Nobody even thought about other gender, other people in this job. So the situation is changing, and I think thanks to the ecosystem, thanks to the impressive economic performance of the country, that there's so many job opportunities for everybody. and the stereotypes are changing, and women are coming to these forefront to work. So that is one aspect. The second thing is that we should ensure that the history is not repeated by going back to the same old thought process itself, that okay, it's stereotype. As you said, what can we do today? Our definition of talent has to be holistic. When I say holistic, it is skill, attitude, behaviors, experience, all of these together come and tell us what job somebody can do. It's not about what gender can do. So if that is our definition in hiring, retaining, etc., these stereotypes will actually fade away on its own, and we don't need to rethink about it. So that is what my perspective is.
Great. I think again, the very important aspect. I think one thing that I may have missed, and I think one aspect that I think has seen a lot of growth in recent times, is that women in tech angle. I think women in tech has grown across organizations. I know Raksha is smiling. I think they've done some great work within that as well. I think women in tech has been one aspect that I think we all agree has grown in the last year or so a lot. A lot of organizations have done some great work there. I think so. Thank you to both the ladies for sharing your thoughts on that. I think I'm going to move on to the next question. And this question, of course, and I'm going to go to Aditya first, with it. When it comes to D&I, for India Inc., what do you think are certain areas of strength? And when I say strength, it could be any aspect of diversity. What are India's strengths when it comes, and what is India Inc.'s strength when it comes to D&I?
See, the strength is, which is now building upon from a DNA perspective, is one is STEM, right, which you talked about to some extent. That's one area where the talent pool is extensively growing, right, where we have a lot of talent which is now coming up in the right fashion. The way it is growing at a multitude fashion is amazing. Predominantly, when you look at gender, the issue was always been at mid to senior, right? It's when you see a lot of women tapering off because of multiple reasons, not even one, but multiple reasons. But with the new flexibility, right, a lot of things which have come into play, maternity, from a lot of other things, flexibility of work, you look at maybe working as a gig worker, so the way the economy is moved in that fashion, somewhere that tapering down has decreased to people more doing horizontal work, maybe not going initially vertically, but then you're not losing on that talent for a period of time. I think that's what's been happening pretty well when it comes to in India, because in India, the difference between India and the other countries is, and I always tell it with my eyes open, is intelligence. That's a big difference, right? While I say education system, which keeps on changing, lately it got changed a few days back, but the way the core values from an understanding education perspective, we are far ahead as compared to a lot of other countries. I think that's, I feel, plays a very, very important part, and that's what I feel is the biggest strength from an India standpoint. But also looking at opportunities, right? Learning and development. We are looking at focusing on the right talent, right? People are looking at bite-sized learning and moving a step further in the right direction. I mean, that's the direction which the talent from an India perspective, irrespective of gender, irrespective of other things, is moving in the direction which India is moving in. We have a lot of programs, right? And I'm sure Raksha and Anu run a lot of these programs. You have returnee programs, you have a lot of other programs, which are a big positive push to the organization, right? And you look at a lot of large organization boards, Prashant, you have a lot of women leaders. That's the direction which a lot of organizations are moving. I think India's doing well, but there are some areas which we spoke about earlier, right? We just need to refocus and position. It's more of mind share, of showing the ROI in the basic terms to say that this is the direction we should be going.
Fantastic. I think the ROI aspect definitely does come into play very, very importantly. Raksha, would you like to add something on the same?
Yes, Prashant. I think, as you asked me, what is the strength that India has in this space, or India Inc. has in this space? I think something that I personally believe in strongly is that as Indians, we are already talking or meeting people with diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds all the time, and for us, every 200 kilometers, the language changes, the food changes, and so on and so forth. So we already, when we're growing up, we already have that alignment or that understanding of how different perspectives, different cultures, different people think, different religions operate together, and so on and so forth, right? Ethnicities work together. I think that's the biggest advantage. So for us to be able to collaborate or to be able to innovate or to be able to partner with somebody who's different than what we are comes naturally, right? However, having said this, this is something, it's like we have to recognize this strength, and a lot of people do not recognize. So the programs have to be designed about saying, we are good at it, and this is where these would be successful. We have banks, the largest banks in the country have women leaders at the helm, right? What a better example, right? Way back we had our prime minister as a lady. What better example? So it's been there. Those strengths are there. They're existing. Just that somewhere in this rut of being running in the corporate race and all of that is taken a back seat.
Great. I think again we touched upon that aspect, and why it's taken a back seat, and hopefully it comes back to the front seat very, very soon. I think great. So I think that first section, I think we've spoken a lot about the current state with respect to India, and I think now at this point I'd like to bring in the audience as well. We're about to go live with our second poll, and the second poll again. Now we're talking about the current scenario. Now we'll talk about the post-COVID phase, or the currently COVID phase that's still on it, because it's not over yet. In the current scenario, how high is D&I on your priority list? It's a very simple question, so I'm not going to give it more than 5 seconds. Hopefully, everyone gets their answers in. All right, so 3, 2, 1. I think we can now see the results of the quiz. All right, so for 12%, it's not at all a priority. For 50%, it's in the top 5. All right, so we respect that. And to the 35% that consider this a high priority task, I mean, kudos. I think that's a great number as well. Right, so I think that brings us to our next aspect. And don't worry, I can see that there are about 5-6 questions already piling up. I'm going to try to take them towards the end. So Divya, Juhi, Takshay, Deepa, everyone, thank you so much for your questions. I'm going to try to, and Preeti, I'm going to come to those questions towards the end, time permitting. Thank you. Next question I think that I do want to ask is, like we asked everyone, I'm going to ask the panelist, where is it in your agenda list? Where do you prioritize D&I in this COVID crisis and whatever's happened? And, how, because I remember Raksha saying that prioritization is one key aspect that you've been working on during the COVID crisis. I'm going to start with you, Raksha, on it.
Perfect, Prashant. I think it's on the highest priority for us at this time. It's always been, and at SAP as an organization, it's never been a cyclical thing. It's always been there, but even in the current situation, it's on the highest priority, and we're focusing. Now it's, again, as I said, diversity is a choice, and diversity is a fact, and inclusion is a choice, right? We've heard about this statement multiple times. It's not my statement, sorry. And why do we say that, right? Because there are 3 aspects which inclusion brings it. It is discovered that higher the people are on emotional intelligence, and that's the primary enabling skill for creating an inclusive environment. And that leads to psychological safety. And psychological safety in today's era is very, very important. For somebody to be able to feel safe, to discuss ideas, experiment, take risks, even give feedback, or make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. I think these are important aspects of feeling psychologically safe. Unless there's psychological safety, the feeling of inclusion wouldn't settle in. So being open, being optimistic, all of these are, skills that would help build this psychological safety. And it's a very important aspect of building inclusion in the organization. And that's why it is on the highest priority for us, because We believe that unless people focus on relationships, they have a tolerance to stress, they are open about what they feel, what they talk about, it's not going to go anywhere. The culture of the organization is to be built that way.
Perfect. I think so. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. If it's always been on the priority list, I think it should stay there. I'm going to ask you, Aditya, because I know I'm expecting a very honest answer from you at this point. Where would you say is it on the priority list? Within the times that we're in.
See, for us as an organization, it's right up there as what Raksha says. I'll be surprised anybody says it's not there up. And for the right reasons, right? Look at what does it enhance? It enhances your creativity, your innovation, right? That's what everybody is right now talking about, right? We are in the current state where we are looking at how do we do the same things much more differently, right? Today, you and I are doing this session. That's also to some extent one part of innovation. Otherwise, we would have done it in a hotel somewhere there, right? It enhances adaptability. Your turnover, from an organization perspective, goes down. You look at, elimination of, interpersonal aggression and discrimination. It actually goes down a lot. There is trust. There is engagement. As I said, your brand builds a reputation. There is high amount of flexibility because the way all of us are wired, as I keep on saying this, is very different. So the need ask are very different, and we are living in an era where everything is personalized. So my expectations from my work is very different from maybe Raksha's expectations from her work, right? So it's very different. And these are the reasons. And if organizations don't have that as priority, I don't know why they're even looking at growing, right? Because end of the day, as I said, if you have the same input, same set of people who will keep on saying yes, yes, right? Your output will be minimal or anything, right? That's why you see a lot of teams have connect sessions and say we do blue sky thinking. In a diverse team, you don't need to do blue sky thinking, right? The output itself comes in that very different way. Blue sky thinking is somebody then puts one word and you will say, yeah, good idea. So let everybody follow that person. So herd mentality, yeah. So my input.
Great. I think talking about how it is an important priority and how it actually adds that business case as well is very, very crucial. Anu, what would you like to say about your own priority list?
Definitely one of the top 5. The reason is different. I think one is the business we are in. We are in healthcare information technology, and our ultimate users of our solutions are patients. And there is no diversity or inclusion there. You have no choice of who your patients are. So if you're creating solutions for your patients, the culture that we have to build in predominantly has to be it's an inclusive culture. That is one. The second thing is the face of our organization. About 40 years in the industry and sizable locations, everything. And I think we need to really look at this as a sustainable goal for us. How do you ensure that this is a culture that we uphold across locations, across geographies, across groups, etc. So that is the second element. And the third element, I think I wouldn't attribute it to COVID. COVID has definitely created a lot of change in our ecosystem. One is that there's so much of empathy, heightened empathy among a lot of people. You call up people. The first thing that you could ask, do you have a good story or a bad story to share? So, and there's so many experiences which you can relate to, which actually makes you drive a lot of fewer biases and greater inclusion as individuals. So I think individuals make organizations. So I think the ecosystem today is very favorable because everybody is going through directly or indirectly the impact of the situation we are in currently. So that actually is the reason why all the more important. But otherwise, as an organization, the business, the age of our organization, the phase at which we are in, the clients we serve, etc., requires a culture which is kind of inclusive, and that's why it is on the top priority. Now, there might be smaller organizations in India, but the size is smaller. they're just thinking about survival. Now it's too difficult, but I think as a culture, you need to plant it at the right time, at the initial phase itself, so that it is not difficult to build as the organization grow up, because it's not about gender or color or community. It's about thoughts, acceptance, sensitizing, trying out, different methodologies to bring people together, etc. So that is how I would look at this.
I think that's a classic case of how your end user is completely, it's completely diverse. Anyone could be a patient, and which is why it automatically affects your organization as well. I think that's another great share. Right. So I think what we discussed right now was a very macro view of where your priority lists are. I'm going to go straight into a very, very micro topic, because this is something that came across in the questions that have come in. And of course, I think myself as well, I was a little curious about this aspect as well. I think for the longest time, and in terms of returnship programs, we've had conversations around working mothers and how to bring them back to the workplace. How do we do that? Do we do a 3-month internship? What do we do? What do we not do? Because, working from home wasn't the most used method for a lot of organizations. Well, now, I think with working from home becoming a very important aspect of the new normal, will this change the way we hire or rehire working mothers? Will this, lead to a change in attitude? And I'm going to ask Anu and Raksha both, starting with Raksha. I think, do you see this being a sort of a blessing in disguise, if I can call it? I know it's a terrible time, but I'm just trying to sort of see if is this something that will push it in the right direction?
Prashant, personally, my feeling is that, we shouldn't single out returning mothers. There are multiple such, categories of people who would want to return to work. For whatever reason, they had taken a career break and they would want to return to work. Obviously, working, or returning mothers are possibly the highest population there. This pandemic and this entire exercise of companies being forced to move to a remote working environment will definitely create more opportunities for the talent. And it could be diverse talent anywhere and everywhere. We're talking about saying how we work from anywhere. Do we, we're hearing organizations saying we are extending work from home till December, till June, etc., etc. So all of this, in all of this, what we're creating is an environment where we value diverse talent, and we are creating a culture where we, as an organization, gain from their experiences and their competencies. Right. So definitely yes, but we're still in the pandemic. We don't know. Talking about what the new normal would be, what a post-pandemic world would look like. I would believe it's too early, but yes, we're seeing a trend of having more focus towards gig economy, more focus towards job sharing, and so on. There are multiple ways that we are looking at leveraging the talent that is available. It may not always be a permanent employment solution.
Fair enough. I think taking it one step at a time would be the better way to go about it as well. Anu, what would you say on the same?
So does it open job opportunities? Definitely. I think the invisible workforce, we're actually experimenting, we're experiencing that. There's invisible workforce, job can be operated from any location, different employment models can be worked out, and we're being very sensitive and also accepting that family responsibilities and office responsibilities can be, you can meld them together. And we're also very confident about that this is that you can really run the show with anybody sitting anywhere. So that actually opens up a lot of job opportunities. That is definitely a very big opportunity, and I would say it's a blessing in disguise. Now, every opportunity comes with a responsibility. Now, a woman has to do, working mothers, even if you're shut in this room, there's so much of chaos which is happening outside this room with the children. So that is the big responsibility which a mother has. So you have opportunities, but it also comes with responsibility from all the stakeholders to make your career successful. So it's not, I feel that this is an option for companies to try out and get more diverse population. I'm talking just about gender, but diverse, and it can be of any different, for example, if I want to hire somebody from a small town in one remote city in say Assam, or let's say Meghalaya, or in Kerala, I can actually reach out to the talent. So that is that's an advantage that we're getting here. However, there are certain jobs which still cannot be open and drive these kind of remote working, because we are in technology. I would consider it's a blessing, but in other jobs, maybe it's not possible. However, I see that, like you see a lot of part-time jobs opening up, etc. So different types of jobs are opening up, different types of avenues are there for returnship and also for women. And the other thing that I want to tell you is, I don't like to classify women on breaks as just another class, because the job they do outside, when they're on break, is equal to, typically, I would say it's a tough job to bring up a family. It's tough. It's tough. So that it's a big experience. So we should definitely give opportunities, and if they're capable, if they're workable, if they're employable, we should hire them. There's no need of classifying it as returnship, or just open up avenues. And if they're being successful, I think the biggest problem in India is the leaky pipeline. And once class toppers, I think some of these women, I'm talking about women specifically, they were all class toppers at one point in time, but today they are homemakers by choice. So there is nothing stopping them to come back and restart their career just like that. It's just an opportunity and just a mindset change. And then I think we can be a little more open and, sustain their career. So I know it's a long answer to a short question, but I know I just get, that's what my beliefs are.
No, I think any diversity conversation without passion is barely a diversity conversation. So it's all welcome as always. Actually, I think because for the next 5 minutes, and I'm going to start it off with a bit of a poll right now, and this will be our third and final poll. And it goes out to our audiences very simply asking them, do you have enough leaders, in your organizations to lead the D&I agenda? I know we've said that it's not a specifically recruitment problem. So through the organization, do you have enough leaders who are leading this agenda, talking about it? Yes, our organization is a pioneer in this space. I know what Raksha is answering. Yes, but the pace of change is slow. No, we need more change leaders with your pretty simple options. Yes. And after this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of delve into the questions that have come via the audience as well. And we're going to go quickly around the panelists to see what they have to add on that as well. Let's see what the results are of that quiz. Right. So I think, as you can quite clearly see, 40% think the pace of change is slow, 40% think we need more leaders, and about 20% say that, yes, our organization is a pioneer in this space. So I think largely that serves the purpose of us asking that question, because that is what I was looking for. And I'm going to quickly sort of take a look at the rest of the questions that are coming in, and within the chat as well. I think like was shared by the panelists, I think IT and IETS jobs, work from home will definitely have a better advantage for them. Like Balasubramaniam Mahadevan says, I think completely agree. Great point about psychological safety as an enabler. Great. I think that's another valuable point. I'm going to go around the panelists now, starting with Aditya, and I'm going to ask one question, and you have to give me a one-line answer each. All right. This is a question that may require a longer answer, but you have to constrict it to one line. What would you say is the most difficult part of implementing a D&I program? Right, Aditya. First, I'm going to come to you. This question is asked by Preeti Sahu.
What is the most difficult part in implementing a D&I program? Yeah, thinking of it as a program.
Perfect. Great. I think great. Raksha, I'm going to come to you next.
I think not being able to relate it back to the business strategy and have everybody own the D&I program.
Anu.
All the stakeholders being convinced about the need and embracing that is the biggest challenge. It has to be everybody's need.
Yeah, I think again, very, very valuable insights there. I think the other question that is coming, that is a little more direct, I think. And how do you change the mindset of the interviewer to hire for diversity candidates? Or should there be a change around it? This question comes from Noor Jahan. Aditya?
Yeah, so it's always alphabetical, right? He's probably carried. I'm sure Anu is laughing. Predominantly, yes, you need to change the mindset of the interviewer because there is unconscious bias, right, when they interview, right? So we have a program called Interview Inclusive Panel. Predominantly, also, you need to question back if you are the hiring manager, what's your mix of people who are interviewing for you, right? And it talks about how conscious are you when you have your own interview panel. Are there women? Let's look at gender right now because India is predominantly gender. Are there women in your panel or not? First, very basic thing. Secondly, is also to uh, gauge and train your interviewers what is required from the role, right? There are tools now. You have, CV masking. There are a lot of other ways of looking at, giving the right output. But it is very important that you train your interviewers and make them understand why are you doing this. The why part is always missing. Predominantly, a lot of people look at it from an angle of saying that I need to hit X percentage because that's my diversity mix I would want to reach, right? So don't look at that. But that was something initial. We have all pivoted to something else today. So.
Perfect. I think Anu, would you like to sort of add a pointer on that on the same aspect? How do you change? How do you work on the mindset of the interviewer?
So, what are you hiring for versus who are you hiring is the question that the interviewer should be made aware. I think maturity in interviewing will help in managing this. I think unconscious bias, I think there are a lot of tools to get rid of all of that. But are you hiring for the job or are you hiring for a person or are you looking at just a person and hiring? So that what and how, why question will actually help you mitigate this problem.
Raksha?
Yeah, I think it's important to educate the hiring managers about the biases that they have, conscious, unconscious, whatever the biases could be. And second, I think, diversity is a given. How do we make it inclusive is something that we need to work upon. And the only way to do it, in my mind, is one, show enough proofs about how diversity or how inclusion has worked. And you will have success stories either within your organization or outside of your organization, depending on what your organization has been focusing on, and drive it in an approach which is both bottom up and top down. I think it's a combination of both of this. And as Aditya sometime back said, calling it a program in itself means that it is set up for failure. It's a way of life. And till the time, that's the culture that the organization is building. And one of my fellow panelists brought up a point saying, smaller organizations. And I come back to the fact that I earlier said, and I will, this relates to what you're asking. Inclusion is a choice that we are making. And, how we can unleash the potential of rich collaboration is the process of inclusion. So it is not about the size of the organization or the number of years that the organization has been into business. I think unless we create an inclusive environment, we will not be able to make people feel valued. And unless they feel valued, they will not feel psychologically safe, which means that they will not be open, they will not be at their innovative best. So if we're able to articulate all of this, that is when the hiring managers would, this is all that we need to tell and educate the hiring managers and the business leaders about.
Fantastic. I think again that talks about talking to the hiring managers, opening that line of communication as well. I think that's also crucial. And I think that sets up one more question that I will sort of take because it's an interesting one. And Jashan Joshi asked that question. Thank you, Jashan, for that question. From a hiring point of view, do you think there needs to be a targets to achieve diversity? I think that comes from some experience as well from Jashan, if I know him well. Aditya, what would you like to say? You can very simply answer in yes or no also.
No, I will answer it. See, it really depends. Where are you from an organization perspective? Okay. The main aim of doing some of these activity is why are we doing it? You need to make it a level playing field, right? And then if your organization has only men, then it's a challenge, right? Let's just talking gender right now. So you need to see where your organization is, make the right move from an organization perspective of saying that uh, I need to get there, right? How do I get there right now? Okay. But at the same time, don't, there's a thin line between looking at competency also. Don't shortchange the other person just because the other person was from another gender, right? Don't do that. It has to be a concerted effort, but then the direction which you want to organization to move, right? Initially, I'm sure all of us have worked in organization where we had targets, right? In recruiting, you can't live without targets, as simple as that, right? But then we've all graduated from there, right, to looking at things far more differently, understanding why. In one of my erstwhile organizations, one of the key account people just walked off. I was told because all the people who were presenting were all men, right? They said, if that's the way we don't want to work with that organization. So
Yeah.
I've seen that. So the reasoning is what you need to bring to the table, and then people will join the bandwagon. I think a lot of people have asked this, right? The reasoning, why? If you answer that why, you don't need a target, honestly.
Fantastic. I think that sort of covers a lot of questions that we've been able to take from the audiences as well. And before we leave, I'd like one very key aspect to be touched upon by all panelists within one minute each, right? And this is one very simple question. I'd like to learn about one best practice at your organization, previous, current, something you observed that you've been impressed by. One favorite diversity best practice, and I'm going to start with Anu this time, and then we move on to Raksha, and Adi gets to go last this time.
Yeah. So typically, when we look at these diversity conversations, and especially wearing the TA hat, the biggest challenge is the shortage of applicants. So as leaders, our job is to manage the funnel at the better, and what practice, how to reach out to active and passive talent pool all the time. So that is one best practice that I constantly believe. And also in terms of a metric, I think no recruiters can survive without metric or measurable goals. So it depends on the phase of the organization, age of the organization, etc. You have to define. But the answer that I would say, which is relevant here, is that we have responsibility to manage the funnel, manage the pipeline. So go for it to build that pipeline. So that's what we do to ensure that we improve our balance. As Aditya said, it can be the reverse also. The two, the gender is different, and or the need of the hour is different, or region wise, maybe it's consolidated in one location. So we need to just look at diverse thoughts. So that is we have access to that, and we need to really be aware and then go ahead and plant those initiatives or ideas to ensure that the funnel is large.
Fantastic. I think pipeline management, a very key aspect of how you could work on this. Raksha, next.
I think one of the key practices or something that I've seen working is build your allies. If we talk about gender, it could be, if you're hiring female talent, it could be men whom you're building as your allies and your champions to promote that cause. If it is about hiring, from somebody from the LGBT community or somebody with autism, and an autism at work program is a huge program at SAP and so on. And I'm not specifically talking in context of SAP, but something that really works is to have those champions and build and have the courage to challenge some of the norms on why something cannot be done in a certain way, or why cannot we be more diverse and inclusive. I think those are two good practices that I've seen.
Role models, champions, employee advocacy. I think that is again some very, very wonderful and important aspects, and these are very doable at most organizations. So please do, to all the attendees, all 180. I think we've retained about 90% of our audience. So if you're here, I mean, these are things that you can try out at your workplace as well. Adi, what would you like to add?
See, companies should be prioritizing inclusion and diversity right now, because we are in a phase of innovation, right? In the face of crisis, and if you want to seek different output, there's no better way to doing it. What you're doing it right now. For me, my best learning has been in one of my erstwhile organization, and where I just walked into one of my DNI leaders, and I sat with her and understood why is it important. I think so. Once I got that grounding right, and that's when I got an advantage of getting into some of these client calls and some of these meetings where I understood why are we doing it. For me, that's very very important. And then as it sits right, different organization, different maturity level, right? One shoe doesn't fit everybody. So we need to see where we are from an organization perspective. But my input to everybody is please take the leap of faith, because end of the day, this is a way of life, right? As simple as adopting to technology, right? We've all been pushed into it, so better be the first adopter is what I say.
Fantastic. I think being the early adopter will have its advantages here. And like you said, I think uh, the open-mindedness that you had to walk into a conversation with your D&I leader. I think communication, I think we'd all agree, would be one of the very, very key steps that are doable at a very small scale, at a large scale as well. So I think wonderful. I think that's another great share there. Now, and of course, I think some great aspects coming in on the same aspect as well. I think within the chat, I'm looking at some wonderful questions and pointers. But unfortunately, I think I would not be able to take all of them. I'd love to get some closing thoughts, from all three panelists. I think even though Addy sort of gave us a wonderful quote right now, I'm going to push him again to give us another liner in a bit. And so Anu, I mean, firstly, just your take on this experience, this webinar, and the conversation that we had today. What do you hope the takeaways and everything?
Yeah, I think we are in a highly accountable and responsible job as TA leaders, and also that is, and we, as I said, we manage the intake, but there's also the downstream activities that is required. So I think Raksha pointed it out sometime back that it's a responsibility in this challenging and fast-paced environment that we believe that is required for sustaining the organization and build this theme. When I say theme, that has to be embraced by everybody in all aspects of our job, whether it is branding, whether it's recruiting, whether it's HR policies, HR practices, etc. So that has to be one indicator, one consideration in all what we do in employing as individuals in organizations. So that is my final point on this.
Perfect. Raksha, what would you like to add?
Yeah. So I'll start with a quote from Stephen Covey, which says, "Strength lies in differences and not in similarities." And that's a powerful statement. And something that when you started, Prashant, with the webinar, you said our audience wants to know what are some of the doable things, some of the practical learnings that they can take back and implement in their organization. And I think we spoke about a lot of it. So that is what I would believe. And again, I said, is diversity an advantage? It depends on how are we able to leverage on that advantage. It's something that is doable.
Perfect. I think how do we leverage that and use it as an advantage? Addy, quickly, one last one.
So remote working has enabled us to look at flexibility from a very different angle, right? The physical infrastructure barriers have moved out. I would recommend people to get that other barriers out of their mind and move in the right direction.
Wonderful. So guys, remove all the barriers, and with that, I think we bring the hour to an end. It's been a wonderful experience for me to sort of have this conversation with all three panelists, all the attendees that have been here, about 80-90% of you. Thank you so much for staying with us. Do sign up and do finish the feedback form on your way out, because that helps us get better every time. We do this every 2 weeks. So for us to improve, you have to give us feedback and give us something to work on. Thank you so much for staying with us. Questions, answers, everything. To the panelists, Wednesday evening, you spent your 1 hour with us. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And as we can see, I think the attendees are also excellent quotes as well. So thank you so much to all the panelists. We hope to stay in touch and have many more conversations that make a difference to the HR world. Thank you to everyone.